Alright, so we're back from our test flight and the Nazgul5 V2 did an amazing job, guys. I had a blast flying this thing. The 5-inch hype is real, guys. So let's talk about it. Alright, so we got out there. Weather was pretty nice today. Very nice and warm. Low winds between 5 and 10 miles an hour. Now, as you saw in the previous video, I did have one of these batteries on here. I was doing the installation of the battery mat and for this battery strap. But my initial goal was to fly with the 4S battery first, get a feel for that, and then move on and transition over to the 6S power source. But unfortunately, I already had this already on there and I forgot it was on there. So, I just plugged it up, put it on the ground, put my goggles on and took off. And this thing took off pretty normal, no fuss, no drama. It felt like a normal drone, guys, pretty easy. The only discernible difference was just that it was just slightly, and I mean slightly louder, no big deal. I mean, we have bigger props on here, so it makes sense why it's a little bit louder. Now, as I put the goggles on, the first thing that was apparent was this camera here. This camera is so clear. This Caddx Ratel is amazing. Now, I've used the Caddx Ratel V2 on numerous drones, and I still stand by it. I don't know if it's a 4:3 aspect ratio or what, but I think this is the best analog camera in the game. I just think like the HDR is really good. It exposes really well for both the ground and the sky. You're never really blown out. And the colors are very natural or an accurate representation of the actual colors in the scene. So yes, I flew around for a while and I got pretty comfortable really fast. And I was like, okay, let's just try a punch out here. Let's see how this is gonna work with the 4S battery, not knowing that I had a 6S on here. And I did the punch out and it felt pretty okay. Nothing really shocking or crazy, but that was just for a few seconds. I didn't wanna damage this drone, but it did fly pretty well. Now, the first thing I noticed on that punch out was just how much more noisy it was. As I said, I took off, it was a little bit noisier than my traditional 3.5-inch drones. But in this case, when I did the punch out, it just screamed, guys. So this thing isn't as low-key as the smaller drones. These props aren't particularly loud, but it's just a characteristic of these larger drones, guys. It just adds to the experience. It just adds to just what you're maneuvering, what kind of device you're dealing with. And it just screams, it just echoes, and it's a pretty cool sound, guys. So as I'm getting the feel for the drone, I'm just moving around and this thing is just showing its perfect behavior. It's showing just the composure of this drone. I don't know if it's a combination of the tune or just the fact that it's a true X design, but the whole combination of this thing just tracks straight. All your inputs were felt immediately, guys. As soon as you move that stick on the controller, it does it. You release the stick, and it just stays in place. That's a good sign of a good tune. No abnormal noises, just a really good flyer. So I'm flying this more and more, and as I maneuver the drone, I'm feeling like this thing is moving pretty good. The biggest difference to me is just the acceleration, and not really just a punch out, but when I make a turn and I get on the throttle, it accelerates really quickly, guys. It's so agile. Just the performance of it is just really good. Now, with that said, this thing also feels a little bit heavier than my traditional 3.5-inch drone that I've been flying in the past. And yeah, it makes for a really different but enjoyable experience. You can toss this. It has more inertia, more momentum. So when you get up the throttle, it still goes forward. Same thing if you're going up, you're climbing, it's just gonna keep going for a few seconds. Now, as my first flight came to an end, I looked at the voltage, and that's where I'm like, wait, hold on, this doesn't look like a 4S battery. And then I realized, oh yeah, this is a 6S. Regardless, came in, land, changed the battery, went up for a second flight. This time I used this second battery here. This is a 4S 1500 milliamp hour battery. And then I wanted to see how it would differ from a 6S. So I did fly around for a while. I did get to hang up the drone and try to do a punch out. And sure enough, it was just a little bit slower. Now, my initial, taking off, it felt okay. There's no real difference in performance when you're just flying normally. And that makes sense because although you have less punch out power, the battery is lighter. So it's gonna feel almost the same in normal flight. I got more comfortable with the drone again and said, okay, let's do some more accurate maneuvers. So I did a dive, and sure enough, guys, I got so comfortable. I kind of underestimated the power from the 4S compared to a 6S. So I was doing a dive, trying to power out of the dive, and just wasn't enough time, wasn't enough power. And that was my first ever crash on this drone. So it was a loud thump. Luckily it was in the grass, but it just hit the rear of the drone. So I got there, looked at it, and I thought maybe we have some broken arms or my camera is damaged. But sure enough, got there, everything looked pretty damn good, guys. Nothing wrong, nothing was broken. The camera was tilted, obviously. No broken lens, the lens looks good. Just a little scratch. I don't know how it got there in the front because it did hit the bottom, but a little scratch here on the GoPro. You know, it wasn't until I kind of got to the bench where it was fine, I saw that the propellers were bent. So no broken propellers. I did check it out, and here's the propellers right here. I have two of them right here. You can take a look at it. These things are seriously bent. That should be straight, and you can see it. So I'm surprised it didn't break off. It just bent it, but hey, whatever. All right, talking about crashing and putting the wrong batteries in here. I did fly a couple of batteries in here. I have them right here. Hopefully you can see them. So I initially started off with the 6S 1250. My goal was to start with the 4S first, but that didn't happen. So I flew with this first, then I flew with the 4S. Obviously, this is the one I crashed with because of the lack of power there. And then I went to a 13, which is a pretty big battery, a 1300. And then just for kicks and giggles, I went to a 1500, which is pretty big. And this, I bought this specifically for another drone, which you'll be seeing on the channel here very soon. The battery, they work well. This thing, you know, weighs over 700 grams, as we saw in the earlier video. And this thing has adequate power. Though these batteries are pretty huge, they're obviously 6S, but the flight times are really good, guys. I average anywhere between 7 to 7.5 minutes. So that's my flying. I don't just fly balls to the wall, full throttle all the time. I kind of cruise a little bit, then do a trick, and then punch out, and then fly straight again. So it's mixed flying, and 7 minutes is pretty awesome, guys. For the past couple months, I want to say, most of the drones that I bought in the past few months, I've been really impressed with their flight times. Now, these are brand spanking new batteries. So, you know, maybe if you have used batteries, your performance may vary, but 6 to 7 minutes is pretty darn good for a freestyle drone, guys. Really good. Now, talking about the camera earlier, nothing more to add other than this thing. It's simply one of the, in my opinion, the best analog camera. One thing to note that you can see the propellers in view. This is a true X, so the props are in view. It really doesn't bother me. I'm not doing any cinematic, footage. Going to the VTX did a really good job as well. I was really impressed with the quality, the lack of breakup. Now I had pretty good antennas on here. I started flying with the shorter included antenna on here, and I started initially on the default setting, which was 400 milliwatts, just to see how it went, and it worked okay. I did eventually go to 800 milliwatts, and that worked pretty okay as well. Now midway, I did change the antenna. I did put a long range antenna on here, and the performance was significantly better than the shorter one, even at 400 milliwatts. Now talking about the other antenna, we talked about the RX on here. Now the RX that came with this drone was the FrSky XM Plus. I have it right here. And I knew when I bought this drone, I wasn't even gonna use this, but I had already bought a Crossfire Nano module when I bought this drone. I didn't intend to do this soon, but sure enough, I forgot about Crossfire. I went straight to Express LRS. Express LRS wasn't a thing when I bought the Crossfire Nano module, but I put the Express LRS receiver in here. I think it works really well. Having said that, guys, this is all to say that this is the best reception I've ever gotten out of an Express LRS receiver, the best. All right, guys, so overall, this drone is amazing, guys. This thing did exactly what I wanted to do. It tracked straight. There was really no surprises except this receiver here. I mean, this receiver didn't bind to my radio. Besides that, everything went as or better than I expected. Really good. I mean, yes, I had one crash, but this thing exceeded my expectations. The fact that you can put a 4S battery on here and make it more subdued, but it still flies pretty good, yeah, makes this a really good candidate for your first 5-inch drone. Now, would I recommend this as your first drone? I don't think so, guys. There's a lot that goes into this, and for a first-time drone, this might be a little bit too much. You probably don't want the responsibility of this either. There are added things that come along with this drone besides just having a bigger, more powerful drone. You have to buy bigger batteries, maybe get a better link on here. Got to consider a camera. There's just added costs with one of these larger drones, like more expensive and bigger propellers and motors. There's just added things involved in it. These batteries aren't cheap by any means. Now this thing is confidence inspiring, maybe a little bit too much, only because I was taking risks that I normally wouldn't take with a new drone. but that's a good sign of a well-tuned drone or a drone that's performing very well. The other reason why I want to recommend this as your first drone is because in the back of my head, I kept reminding myself, this thing is dangerous. This thing is significantly heavier. This thing is significantly faster. If I were to crash this thing, this could do substantial damage to a person or property. So that's one thing you have to remember if this is your first drone, or if you want to consider this as your first drone. So having said that, who is this drone for? And you can probably figure it out based upon what I just said. This drone is perfect for a person who has previous flying experience. Maybe you're coming from an RTF kit, or maybe you have some experience flying whoops, any kind of FPV experience, and you want something more powerful, something larger. This to me is the perfect 5-inch drone, or the perfect first 5-inch drone, guys. And that's because this thing has everything included. It performs well, it flies well, and you know, it looks the part. Look at this thing. This thing is very attractive. It's one of the drones in the market that's really inexpensive, especially for a 5-inch drone. You can get into one of these for less than $300, guys. I know that they have the Evoke, and that's a more modern drone. The price is significantly higher as well, maybe $50 to $60 more. And then you get a little more cosmetic with some more lights on there, but it is essentially almost the same drone, guys. This is a valid option for you. Highly consider this if you are looking for your first 5-inch drone. Now, if you're new to the hobby and you're a brand new pilot and you're kind of hesitant about going straight to a 5-inch drone, I have some of my favorite 3.5-inch drones right here. I've done reviews on these, and these are pretty cool to start off with. I'll leave them linked right here. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.